Hey, it's another video about gambling. That's cool, right? Do love gambling. Anyway, the reason I wanted to make this video is because it's a really important topic that could potentially do a lot towards helping the future of Star Rail. HSR saw a lot of success just within its first year and change of existing. With its simple gameplay that could be heavily optimized by grinding for like 12 years, its interesting story, world, and characters. The game, in my opinion, didn't really get any hint of major bad press until power creep within the game started to feel like a big issue. Which it most certainly is, and if you're in denial about that, well, you're just in denial. The power creep in Star Rail felt like a sheer cliff dropping off when compared to a game that was the standard for the industry at the time of HSR's release, Genshin Impact. A lot of this has to do with the characters simply being easier to differentiate from one another with the system that Genshin has in place for its combat. Since it's a real-time combat game with its elemental reaction system, this just gives units a larger variety of ways to be truly different. So it isn't just because Star Rail is a turn-based game either, but because it's a turn-based game that is very, very simple in its design that power creep becomes such an issue that is hard to avoid. Star Rail has 3 buttons. That's it. And a lot of units really only use like 2 of those buttons. Now, some units have enhanced versions of one button or another, which makes their gameplay stand out a little bit, but at its core, the foundation on which Star Rail is built is so incredibly simple that it's kind of hard to make power creep not an issue when it comes down to it. Now, power creep is going to be a real issue in any game that follows this kind of formula for character releases. Any kind of gacha game is going to release units that are stronger than units they released earlier. That's just par for the course. And it's not to say that it doesn't happen in Genshin, because I used that as an example before. I mean, units like Farina, Nuverlet, Arlecchino, Mavuika, and many others just were straight up significantly better than a lot of other units at the time of their release. That being said, it doesn't feel nearly as bad as it does in Honkai Star Rail. Part of the problem in Star Rail is that the endgame content you have to do, which is like the only real things that power creep matter in, is really the endgame content in both of these games. It's just got a significantly worse HP inflation problem than something like Spiral Abyss does in Genshin. When playing Star Rail, it can feel like the MOC 11 you just cleared has as much health as the MOC 12 you cleared last month. Because it probably does. More drastic power creep in characters and more power creep in endgame just makes you feel kind of bad, especially if you missed out on literally 1 or 2 banners and now all of a sudden you feel like your teams just are markedly worse than they were a month or 2 ago. Now, some people have dedicated their accounts to older units and have built around them so well that they still clear with them. I'm sure you can find multiple examples of people clearing content with units like Zila after hyper-investing in that character, having every optimal support, having the most broken artifact they can get after, spending a year's worth of resin just on that one character alone, and probably having a healthy dose of limited Eidolons as well. But I mean, you can have like C0 aggravate Kaching and probably have an easier time clearing endgame content in Genshin than you can with a decently invested Zila in Star Rail. And Kaching's a standard character. And now, I might be biased because I play Kaching, so that's why I'm using Kaching as an example in Genshin, because I've played Kaching the entire time I played the game. And I don't even have C6 Kaching, not that her constellations are even all that good. I have like C2 Kaching. But when I play in-game content, I can do pretty decent with a Kaching-focused team. Now, yes, there are other units in that team that are maybe newer, that are very good, but it's also using, like, Fischl, who's a 4-star that's been out since the beginning of the game. I mean, the point I'm trying to get at is that characters in Genshin just have a longer shelf life, for the most part, when compared to characters in Star Rail. Hu Tao's a good example, because Hu Tao has had some units come out like Mavuika and like Arlecchino, who I mentioned before, who are just better on-field pyro damage dealers than her. But she's been out for years, like multiple years, before any unit even got close to power creeping her when it came to being the dominant on-field pyro damage dealer. And while she has been now, she got to be around for years where she was the top dog when it came to that kind of team. And that's just not the case for basically anyone in Honkai Star Rail. That brings us to how HSR is trying to fix the problem, because allegedly they are. Now, it came out not too terribly long ago that HSR was going to be buffing older characters. And from what it sounds like, these are going to be actual base kit buffs, which would be the best case scenario. No buffs have been confirmed at this point, but it could certainly be a game changer for a lot of players. Now, at first, when they said this, I was thinking maybe they're going to release artifact sets that maybe help some characters. Maybe they're going to, be scumbags and just release a new version of a character and call that a buff, even though you have to pull for them anyway. And if that was the case, I would just be furious, and I'd probably drop the game. Because, you can't just say you're going to buff older characters and then just release a new version of that character, because that's not buffing older characters, that's making a new unit. But it doesn't sound like that's what this is. It sounds like what it is that they are genuinely going to be buffing older characters' base kits. And that is objectively a very, very good thing for them to do. Now, what does this mean? It doesn't just mean that every character in the game is just going to get 20% stronger, because that's just not how that works. We don't know exactly what this is going to entail, whether they're just going to start from, the first character they released and then just move throughout all the 1.x units and beyond and then buff everyone one by one, if they're just going to pick 3 random units and throw them on a banner and then buff them. We don't know for sure what they're going to do, but it does mean that at least it's going to get better for some people. Now, will Sparkle finally get the 100% action advance that she should have had from the beginning? I mean, probably not. She's a 2.x unit, so I don't know if they'll do anyone besides 1.x units. But hey, Jingyuan might get his 37th buff, and this time, they'll actually be doing it on purpose. As I've said in previous videos, I'm burnt out on HSR at present, but this would go a long way towards pulling me back in, and it would be fixing one of the game's most glaring issues. Whether or not it ends up working out, we'll have to wait and see. We still, once again, don't know if they're just going to throw however many units on a banner and buff them, or just go in release order or whatever, but we'll just have to see who ends up receiving buffs and how much it actually impacts them and makes them decent. Whether these buffs actually make them top tier units or just make them slightly less bad than some of them already are, but we'll have to wait and see. A unit like Silverwolf does seem like a prime candidate for a buff, since all of the break units ignore her one, unique piece of utility, and a new unit may also do something with weakness implant in the near future. In the end, buffing old units won't make Blade and Silverwolf the best units in the game for the entirety of the 3.x patch, but we just have to give some leeway and hope that it ends up making them at least decent and not feel like wasted units if they're just sitting on your account right now. Star Rail is a game that I've put a lot of time into, and while I'm not really playing it much right now because I'm just really burnt out on it, seeing a potentially big positive change like this does make me feel like the game may be able to pull me back in if they do this right. I'd love to know what you guys think and what units you'd like to see buffed in what ways. Aside from that, it'd be cool if you could, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, or even watch some of my other stuff, because I promise it doesn't suck. But besides that, I'm going to go ahead and head on out of here. Like I said, I'm still not really playing the game too much, but this felt like a pretty important topic, so I want to just go ahead and give my brief thoughts on it. And, hey, hope you liked it.